Hi guys, my name is Billy Ayoola. I am a Houston resident and a U of H grad, as well as a business owner in the local Houston area. I'm excited to be hosting this panel, especially with an amazing group of women here, female founders that have been making a huge social impact as well as a business impact. And today we're going to talk about diversity in business. So the goal of this particular panel is to teach how to break into industries as well as how to pay it forward to other BIPOC founders, as well as how to manage diversity. So I'll get started with introductions. First and foremost, we have Aigbe, who is a consumer goods entrepreneur who has drastically changed a longtime dual staple in our closets, which is the clothing hanger. So, you know how when you're wearing your hanger and it's stretching out your clothes, makes it look like you have boulder shoulders when you don't, and then your shoulders are just hanging there, floating in the balance. She's solving that problem with some bendable hangers. So we're extremely excited to have the consumer goods side there. We also have Jessica Bolaños, who is a marketing entrepreneur working on helping many entrepreneurs, but particularly she does work with bilingual media projects and campaigns to help everyone tell their stories. We also have Shironda White, social impact entrepreneur in the higher education space. She consults people to help students assess the real costs of college, as well as conquer those costs. We do know college is hell of expensive. So with that being said, let's jump into it. So my first question is going to be directed to Shironda. What has been the biggest challenge you faced as a founder of Color?
Wow, that's a great question. So I think the biggest challenge, number one, is being taken seriously. For me, going into a room where I had over a decade of experience in the field, I have an MBA, all of this stuff in my background. And a lot of times when it comes to investors, being kind of automatically dismissed without them even getting to understand what my qualifications are. Meanwhile, there are other founders who are literally still in undergrad who don't look like me, but are getting a seat at the table, who are being heard, who are not being questioned about qualifications when they literally have no work experience at all. And so it was really just a challenge, just being able to be taken seriously. And I had to just realize I have the customers. I don't need the funders right now. I have the customers, and they're the ones who matter, and they're the ones who are paying. And so I just, moved along and just kept going with my business. And then the funders came along eventually.
Right, after proof of concept. I do have a funny question, and we're going to keep it raw during this whole conversation. When they came back, were you aware of those who hadn't paid you mind before and those who were at least listening? And were you petty?
So that is a great question. And here's the thing. I have to say that we're in an interesting position, just because, a lot of times founders are going after donors, and we've had donors coming after us and we've had to turn them down just because we weren't at a fundraising point yet. Because fundraising is basically a full-time job, and we just didn't have the capacity to even do that, and we didn't need the money right away. And so one thing I've had to learn is that when it comes to entrepreneurship, you can't be so, what is the word? We can't, I don't want to say can't be petty, but it's like you have to, if they're ignoring you, now all of a sudden they're there, you got to take advantage of that, right?
Exactly.
You can't say, oh, you weren't there for me before, now I don't want you, because then you're not going to win. You have to leverage the resources that you have, leverage the wins that you have. When we won Mass Challenge and got that big check, all of a sudden we were being contacted by people who would not have even acknowledged us before. And it was very easy for me at first to say, well, you didn't care about us before, why do you care about us now? And the reality is doors are being opened for us, and we need to walk through them rather than saying, I'm staying on the other side of this door because you didn't care about me beforehand, because then we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
Very good point. Important not to take anything too personally. A lot of it is just lack of education, lack of awareness, and quite frankly, sometimes ignorance as well. A lot of people don't know that there are many qualified entrepreneurs out there that they are overlooking. So very important for everyone not to take anything too personally. It is just business. However, it is also important to stay confident in yourself, which Shironda did. And as you guys can see, she kept fighting until she got what she was looking for. And that's always a good thing. Also, I also have noticed that a lot of times working with non-minority business owners and not just people that have funds, you can run into resistance as well. Io, I had a question for you. What has it been like finding and working with vendors and manufacturers?
That has been an interesting experience, but also it's been my favorite experience. I'm an engineer, or I'm an engineering student, so I love everything product and working with supply chain and manufacturing. And so I will say it's been interesting, and it's kind of like similar to just like relationships. Everything comes down to relationships that I've seen. You can have suppliers, or I've had suppliers where like we just didn't have a good relationship and I didn't want to do business with them, even though they had exactly what I needed. And so I've had better relationships, and we've done really great business together with some supply chain partners. So I would say it's been just like managing relationships and finding good partners that you want to grow and build with. So I've had the good and the bad. So
That's
yeah.
good. Have you ever felt any denial or any resistance due to race or gender?
With the vendors,
Yeah, with vendors.
you know, I actually I can't say I have. I
That's
can't say I
good.
have, because I think that people see how passionate I am about what I'm doing and how prepared that I come in our
Right.
meetings, and exactly what I need from them. And I think when people like see that you have like you're ready and you want to do business, then they won't turn that down, generally speaking. So I haven't had a terrible experience with vendors specifically.
That's good. That's good. That is a great thing to hear. Sometimes we get pushback. I know me personally, at a certain point when I was looking at the hospitality industry and went to meet a farmer, and over the phone, everything was fine. As soon as he saw me, it was like, hold on, you're the guy that wants to start a steakhouse? And that was the first question. He gave me some product to test, never texted me back after that. So sometimes you're going to run into things like that too. But surely enough, what IO is saying is that there are a lot of people out there that focus more on merit, which is always a beautiful thing to see. And that is the most important thing as well. So always look for people that you actually want to work with, who respect you for the type of person you are and also the type of business person you are. Very good. I like that. And then also, we often hear of challenges, but also there are some advantages that come with being an entrepreneur of color. So I wanted to ask Shironda first, what is the biggest advantage that you've seen as being an entrepreneur of color?
So I think with Kazi DU, the biggest advantage really has been being able to reach the students and the families that other people can't reach. So we're not the only ones in the field in terms of helping families pay for college. There's at least one other startup in Boston that is big and doing this, and I'm sure there are others across the country. But we're the only one that is founded by, number one, women, and two, non-white founders. And so the others are all white men, literally all of them. And so what that means is when we go to organizations like, let's say it's the UNCF or Thurgood Marshall College Fund, or schools that have primarily upward bound trio programs, or whatever the case is, they're looking at us and realizing that their families can relate to us, but then they can relate to these other startups that
Right.
have people who don't look like us. And not only do we look like them, we also have certain lived experiences that they can relate to that maybe the other companies can't. We're also able to really filter or test for implicit bias in the people that we hire, whereas the other companies probably aren't even considering that.
Right. So relatability is one of those things for sure.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And then have you also seen it most common that um, different different entrepreneurs may not know of all of the problems that exist, like you said, due to life experience?
Yeah. So I think that one of the challenges, and this is something that I've seen across pretty much any company that I've worked for, is that when everyone looks alike, when they all have the same backgrounds, they have huge blind spots, huge. And so we're able to come in and look at things from a different perspective. And we're able to say, well, what about this? And how do you solve for this? And hey, by the way, this is going to be a challenge that's going to come up in ways that others can't. And so we're able to be more entrepreneurial, I would say, in the sense that we're able to come up with more creative ideas to solve problems that they've had for a long time and haven't been able to solve.
That's good. That's good. Jessica, I do have my first question for you. It comes from the Q&A section. So Anonymous asked, how can you conquer imposter syndrome when everyone in the business world around you looks different from you?
That's a tough one for me because I don't know if I've ever felt like that, to be honest. But I mean, I also grew up in a small town where I was probably one of 5 non-white people. So I kind of, I had a different experience growing up than a lot of people that I know. And I think that really helped a lot. I know like whenever we were in the Wolf Center, Billy, I heard that, you know, from different people, and I just couldn't relate to that. So, but I mean, I've also heard, you know, I have a lot of friends that are, you know, of color, and they don't really think about that, and they use that as a strength, you know, or they just ignore it. Or I know you kind of have a little bit of that, Billy, and you don't even care. You're just in the room, you know, claim your space. So that's just the most important, I think, just to be, you know, confident in yourself, and you know your abilities, you know your skills, you know you're an educated person. You're just as welcome in that room as anybody else. And if there are people there that have a different opinion, well, to me, I don't really focus on those people. I wouldn't be doing business with them anyway, so I don't really worry too much about that.
That's a great point. Being able to overlook the few people in the room that may not make you feel as welcome and focusing on those that do. That's really important. Also, Jessica. Oh, go ahead, Aya.
I can weigh in on that because I've definitely experienced that in my now 4-year journey. I think for me specifically, it's like not seeing a lot of Black women, at least like from what I've experienced or just seen, that are doing like what I'm doing, but in an advanced way. And so feeling like, can I actually achieve those heights? Can I actually do that? Because I've never seen it before, so I don't know what it's like. And so for me, like I'm in engineering, so that's predominantly white and male, and I'm in entrepreneurship, which is predominantly white and male. And so I've been in these fields where there are people like that don't look like me. However, I think like Jessica was saying, just using it as an advantage, because you come from a very unique perspective and you have a very different lens on the problem that you're trying to solve. And I think kind of putting like that focus on your strengths is like a key part of it. But I think, yeah, it's a natural feeling. I know tons of women founders that experience it, and it's kind of like one of those things that you have and you like just blaze through it despite it.
Right, definitely. I mean, even for minority males as well, can be a huge challenge, you know, and I mean, for what Shironda was saying earlier too, it's one of those things where when it comes to entrepreneurship, a lot of times people are overlooking something because they don't know the abilities that we may possess. So like Jessica said, you can always use that as an advantage, but psychologically it is a little bit of a challenge. We just have to focus on those who are focused on our merit instead, and use that to kind of boost us, and maybe even take pride in being underestimated, right? Because I think that does work as an advantage. Shironda, did you have something to add?
Yeah, so I started my company out of business school, and before I went to business school, I worked in executive education for 5 years, I think it was, at Harvard Law School. So I'm working with, I'm selling programs to general counsels, chief legal officers of Fortune 1000 corporations. So basically rich white men, right? That's pretty much all it was. And I had to network with them. I had to schmooze with them. I had to sell to them. And what I learned was that you can find some sort of commonality. It might be something really small. Like there was this one general counsel where it turned out his daughter was trying to get into movies, and I had done like extra roles in movies before, so we connected over that. So if you find something, it can be the most random thing, it could be somewhere that you've traveled, it could be the most random thing, but find some way of connecting with people, then that can kind of break down the barriers. When you walk in, they're going to automatically have assumptions about you just because of the way you look. That's just what it is. But if you can find that one thing to break down that barrier, then they'll relax, and then you can, you know, they'll treat you like an actual person, and then you can kind of just go from there. But that was one thing I had to learn. And then the other thing is, I just had to walk into every room like I'm supposed to be there.
Right.
Like the whole saying, you know, fake it till you make it. I walk in like I'm supposed to be there, and then people treat me like I'm supposed to be there, and then I start to feel like I'm supposed to be there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were supposed to be there. No, that's good.
Yeah.
And to your first point, I think that it is really important to be the one to show that we have more in common than we have differences, which a lot of times, I hate to say it, but a lot of white male founders don't tend to believe that or tend to see that a lot of times. So it is really important to be the one sometimes when you walk into a room to prove that, hey, we actually are a lot alike. You know, people may be closed off to talking to you, but if you can show them that before they know it, they're enjoying talking with you and enjoying being sold to, like you said. We do have a chat question, so let me take a look at that here. Oh, so actually, Paula Romero says that I love that. Walk in like you're supposed to be there. Yes, so that is very important. Always walk in there like you're supposed to be there. Also, it's important to have a community around you, a supportive community. So, Jessica, I had a question for you. Have you found or fostered a community with other BIPOC founders, and how did you do it?
I think definitely yes. And it's a lot of it is natural, but a lot of it is, you know, on my part, looking out for those organizations or groups, or there's a lot of them out there right now, especially lately. So it's been getting a lot better. Specific, and there's a lot of people that, you know, they talk a lot about helping BIPOC founders, but that's almost all they do. I'm not a fan of those kind of groups and organizations. I mean, we can be on panels and do all kinds of stuff, but you know, if you're not actually doing something, then I need to find another space. I need to find another group. I know I wanted to give some resources. So there's specifically ones that I found lately. And there's a lot of different organizations that have been popping up specifically to give BIPOC and women founders funding and, you know, resources and tools that are not $1 million that we can't afford kind of thing. There's a lot of those out there too. But like I Fund Women is one, if y'all look them up, and this is specifically more for women, you know, they have like so many grants, like not just their grants, but they basically have created a list of grants or like pitch opportunities and resources and tools for BIPOC and women founders. And they just, you know, curate that. In the past, I've had to do a lot of digging and, you know, try to find all these opportunities for me. And, you know, it takes a lot to even apply to some of these things. Sometimes I think it's getting a lot easier for us. And, you know, people are curating these lists. There's another group, Eureka, that I've been, you know, a part of for a while, maybe like 3 months now. And, you know, they're offering BIPOC founders coaching, free coaching sessions, and, you know, again, grants. We got a grant from them in November. They partnered with like Google Philanthropy. And I know there's like the Comcast Rise grant out there. If you haven't heard about that one, you know, apply for that. You know, they're giving away money, they're giving away marketing resources. So yeah, definitely I'm always on the lookout for all these groups and all these people, and creating our own. Like I know Billy, whenever last summer when all the protests were happening, just having that like IG DM group was super helpful. And I learned so much from you and all the other people in that group. And that was just a random, you know, spur of the moment thing. Like I needed to learn more. I've been in more of the space of supporting immigrants and entrepreneurs in the Latinx Hispanic community. And I wasn't as, you know, familiar about everything that I needed to know in the social impact space in the Black and African American community. And you helped me there. And so, and it's really a lot of the same struggles. So yeah, definitely recommend, you know, sticking with those groups and finding those, your tribe.
Exactly. And we're all here to help each other. You know, as we all are probably familiar with, BIPOC founders, both male and female, have a lot of division that is derived from other people most of the time, or inner insecurities sometimes. I do find that, there has been times where the African American community has told the Hispanic community, well, you guys have your own thing going on, so we need to create our own, and vice versa. We've seen men, say, well, women seem to be taking over. That's perception too. We all need help. The idea, especially between African American men and African American women, that somehow African American women have their own movement and African American men no longer need to be out there to uplift female voices, also wrong. So there are a lot of different misconceptions that are out there that we all need to work together, not only to help each other, but to put down those rumors, those myths, and continue to foster a community together where we all thrive, right? So another thing that was said in the Q&A was, how do we make it aware to people that don't know what they're saying is offensive? So if you're in a situation, for instance, with a white VC, and that VC says something about, better yet, let's say a male VC. A lot of times, male VCs have a tendency to talk about women and family. They talk about the fact that, well, can you really be married, have kids, and be a successful business owner, and things like that. Simple questions about who we are born into being, and make it seem like it's a challenge for us to be successful entrepreneurs. How do we let people know that what they're saying is offensive without also being, ruffling any feathers, better yet?
I don't really have a problem with ruffling feathers, especially if you've just told me something that I feel is offensive. So I think getting past the initial shock is the bigger problem for me, because I'm always shocked no matter how many times it happens, whether it's because I'm a woman or because, whatever reason. And it happens often. It actually happened not too long ago, like maybe a week or two ago again, where I was shocked. I told this VC potential funder, asked me to tell him the story. He knew about our business, and I'm thinking, okay, back to Wolf Center days, let me tell my story. And when I was finished telling my story, he said, well, he gave a disclaimer, and he did say, I'm going to be the bad guy here, but still no excuse. He said, well, that's cute, but there's a lot of immigrants like you, and there's a lot of people that are, that can do what you do. Just because you tell your story, being Hispanic, Latin American, that's not a differentiator. So, and it was the first time I actually ever heard that one because I'm used to telling my story, and this is my unique story, and this is what makes us, able to tell the stories of people in our communities. Yeah. So that was kind of shocking. I wasn't able to say something in the moment because I was so shocked at that one. I've never gotten that before, but usually, and then with time, I didn't cut him off or anything. We still talk, but I think that's the thing. And now we're in communications online where, he's making this similar maybe comments on my pitch deck or whatever, and he's helping me looking at it, and I'm writing in the comments things back now because I'm a better writer than I am a speaker. I mean, I have to think about things for a while, but I'm like jabbing him back on the comments. Like, he said, I don't think that, as another thing, I don't think that billionaires are your buyer persona, CEOs and first of all, like CEOs is one of our first buyer personas. Like we work with the CEOs all the time. And so I just question him, why do you think that? Because, typically that's who we do work for, and just kind of, you have to educate these people as well. Maybe they're not used to dealing with or talking to us, the way that we're like, the way that we talk to each other. We know what we're capable of. Maybe we need to tell them a little bit more or something if that's how they're thinking.
There seems to be a tendency for people to, especially nowadays, feel that people are using something as a sob story. So it is your unique story or your unique life experience, but then they downplay it because either they don't want to hear about it, or they don't feel that it's important. A lot of times people saying things like, well, America's been what it is, get over it. If you talk about race, if you talk about gender, you can't actually get anywhere. So put that stuff on the back burner, take it out of your pitch deck. It doesn't belong in your story. And like Jessica was saying, it's important to realize no one should be able to tell you that. That's still part of your unique life experience. They don't have a right to downplay how that fed into your life or your entrepreneurial journey. Shironda, you also had something to add?
Well, I think it comes down to, at least for the experiences I've had making the business case, I always address the what, but not the why.
Right.
Because when you address the why, when you say that was a sexist comment or that was a racist comment, it puts them on the defensive and then nothing gets handled.
Right.
But I always address the what of what they said. And so I guess one example that continues to come up is when I do a pitch and I talk about my target in terms of like the target audience who we're addressing. I have that slide where it talks about our target. It talks about, age range and all of that. And then almost every single time someone says, okay, so you're working with low income and minority students or first generation students. And it's like, no, that's not what I said. And I always go back to that slide. I will literally back up to that slide and I will say, this is our target. And then I will say, as you see here, I did not mention race. I did not mention socioeconomic status. I did not mention whether or not they're first generation. This is what we mentioned. This is who we address. And so I always come back to that. Give them the visual. This is what you saw. And then they can decide, or they can think about why they concluded that we're working with first generation, minority, or low income students, because clearly that is not what my slide says.
So Shironda, in a quick summary, who is your target market? And just so we can maybe have a better idea of what it is they heard and somehow convoluted and made it something else that it wasn't.
Yeah, so we actually have more than one market. So the first is the families of 8th through 12th graders who are preparing for college. The second is adult learners who are preparing to go into either a four-year college or a community college. And the third is prospective graduate students. We don't mention anything about socioeconomic background because we have financial advisors that deal with the different stages, regardless of what your background is. We don't mention race because we have advisors of different races. Because I know people typically, when it comes to financial services, they want someone who looks like them. That's who they trust. So we have financial advisors of different races. We don't talk about first generation versus not. We have financial advisors with different backgrounds. We don't mention that at all. And yet it always comes up and I always have to correct it. I can't let it slide because number one, it reduces our target. It reduces the number of people that they are assuming we can serve. And number two, because it's just not right. It's just not accurate.
Exactly. So do y'all think that a lot of times people look at us and see or assume our target market saying, Jessica, you can talk to the Latinx community. Shironda, you can talk to African Americans pursuing higher learning. Ayo, you can pursue consumer good items for women and women only. Are those the kind of things y'all feel tend to happen often?
Absolutely.
They're just looking at us and seeing the target market.
The assumption is that we can only reach people who look like us, that there's mainstream, which is everybody else. And then there's who we can reach, which starts with our networks, which is going to be all people who look like us. And I know some industries it's even worse. Like if you're in the medical field, if you're in the financial field, people assume that typically clients go for the advisors who look like them, or the doctors or whoever that look like them. That's what they feel comfortable with. But when you look at our slides and you see people of different races, people of different genders, different backgrounds, we even have people who on there who are physically disabled, like all these pictures to show the diversity of who we have and what we do. And yet they look at me and they assume we work with Black students.
Man, yeah, it's unfortunate. It really is. But I like what you said there about how everything else seems mainstream and then minority founders, they're kind of somehow the rarity, even though minorities have been founding businesses worldwide for centuries. America just has a really bad prejudice, which causes people to have a skewed view. If you go to India, every entrepreneur there is going to be Indian. You go to Nigeria, where my parents are from, every entrepreneur was Nigerian. So it's not outside of anyone's DNA. And speaking of DNA, one question asked in the chat was, did you guys have parents that were entrepreneurs as well? Or are you a first generation entrepreneur? And I'll just take it one at a time. So Io, what about you?
I would say kind of sort of. My mom has always been really into jewelry, and so we actually started together a jewelry business whenever I was in middle school, high school. But I'm a first gen student, so I'm like the first one in my family to go to college, study STEM, start a business. So yeah, I would say kind of sort of in the middle.
That's good. That's good. Shironda, what about you?
So my parents both retired. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mom was a high school teacher and then a college professor. So education and entrepreneurship have been in my family since I was born.
Nice way to merge the two. Jessica, what about you?
Yes. So my parents, they're from Colombia, and when they came here, they did what is typical of a lot of people, at least a lot of Latin immigrants. My mom worked, cleaning houses, stuff like that, and then they started their own business really quickly. So by the time I was born, they already had their business, and then they had food trucks back in the day before food trucks were even a thing. They didn't call them food trucks, they call them catering trucks back then. And they would just kind of roll through the neighborhoods that are the construction neighborhoods and sell to all the Hispanic people working there, making houses. So that was how I grew up, watching them do all that. So that was pretty impactful, I would say. Definitely got me thinking of owning my own business too.
Nice.
And
Perfect.
that thing, I wanted to say something about that first gen thing. So I used to say I'm first gen. And then I was thinking not too long ago that, a lot of immigrants say that we're first gen, but that's not really fair, because a lot of our parents did go to college and do those, they got their education in their home countries. It's just whenever we come here, they were like, nope, that doesn't count.
Right.
So, I kind of like self-labeled myself without even thinking about that. So yeah, I guess here in the United States, I'm the first one to go to, but it's definitely not the first.
Or even like you said, if your parents were entrepreneurs elsewhere and then they come to America and they start working a working class job, all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I'm a first gen entrepreneur, when truly your parents were serving that same role in Colombia. So yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. I have two questions for you. One comes from the chat, one comes from me. So of course, one of the questions was, has anybody ever tried to give your ethnic name a nickname without you asking them to?
That's an interesting question. Because Billy, I have a long laundry list of names and pronunciations. I think the crazy one, just for giggles, the crazy one I've gotten, my full name is Ayoola, but my friend jokingly said, and this was like sometime in elementary or middle school, but she said Idaho, another person said Iowa, another person said Ashdale. So I've had crazy long list of names, but nothing like intentionally mean. So yeah, no crazy nicknames outside of like just for fun.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. You didn't have any like George Bushes around you that just because. That's good. It happens a lot of times. Let's see. Very interesting. Okay, so also I'm gonna skip one of my questions and come back to it. I don't know if it's possible to run over. I'll wait on word from Amanda and Vivian, but we do have a lot of great questions here. One of the other questions was, how do you let management at a company you work at know that cultural holidays are very important to you and that you need time off? Does anybody have a thought on that? Shironda?
So I think it depends. So I know like my brother and I have very different philosophies when it comes to time off when we're working. He typically asks for time off. I let them know that I need time off. That's kind of how things go. And so, for me, I would either say, I need this day off and I'm using a vacation day. If you don't have, any other opportunity. I know some employers will say you can take religious holidays or you can take cultural holidays and it'll count as a holiday.
Right.
But most say you have to take a vacation day or a floating holiday. And so I would just take the day, take it off.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Just like anybody, just like anything else. No, that's a good point. Of course, last summer we experienced, the murder of George Floyd. It definitely affected businesses everywhere. I know a lot of friends had to take off of work also to march to do things of that sort. Very difficult to ask for time off for something that not all employers found to be, a good reason to miss work. But I think it's very important for our mental health. We did have two questions that kind of related to that. I do acknowledge all questions that are in the chat, but please forgive us as we can't get around to all of them. Having mentioned that, I think it goes hand in hand with another question that was asked, which is, do you guys think that diversity and inclusion programs actually work? Which a lot of them were formed after last summer. So I'm just going to jump into that question. Do you think that diversity and inclusion programs actually work? I'll ask Jessica that one.
Again, I would say it depends on the program. So if it's just all talk, no, I don't think that works. If it's just an advisory board, no. If it doesn't include us, no. But the ones that do work, I mean, yes, they're definitely, we can make our impact. I mean, it's our responsibility as well. So, I mean, if there's not a program, you need to start one. I mean, so I've been in spaces, even with you, Billy, where, we had to figure out what we could do because who else is going to do that for us, but yes, they definitely are needed. And, it has to go past, the initial, hey, let's hire one person that's going to be the diversity and inclusion director now. And then they don't have resources or they don't have actual influence. So we need to be able to be in those spaces where we actually have the influence and we can implement things and change things systematically, all the, in the whole business, not just one thing. It's not just about hiring, it's about, okay, after we hire, what are the resources and what are the things that you're doing in the business that are going to help us succeed, in those positions once we're there. That doesn't exist in a lot of spaces. So we need to help people create those things. Only we know what we need again. So yeah, being a part of it is definitely important.
Right, perfect. Shironda, I'm going to ask you a direct question. So your honest opinion, do diversity and inclusion program directors need to be people of color?
Yeah, that's a hard question. So I would say no in terms of people of color, but I say that because diversity and inclusion means more than just race, right? It could be sexual orientation. It could be gender if you're in a field where it's all men, for instance. It could be someone with a disability. So it could mean a lot of different things. I think a lot of times when we hear diversity and inclusion, we automatically assume that it's race. And when we see someone who is not a person of color in that role, we automatically think, oh, a white woman who's in this role, director of diversity and inclusion. Well, if it's an all male industry, then that's still somebody who's a diverse person in that particular role. And so I think the short answer is it depends. But also to answer the other question about whether or not diversity and inclusion works, it depends on what you mean by what does it work. It depends on what the goal is. Because when I worked for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I had a summer internship, and yes, they worked with Management Leadership for Tomorrow, which is a fellowship program for Black and Latinx students. So in terms of diversity, yes, there was diversity because they brought students in from this program. In terms of inclusion, yes, they made us feel included. But when you look at the fact that we all, like, what types of students are getting into MLT? It's students with a certain type of background. It's students who are going to a certain type of school, top 20 business schools typically. And so you're getting diversity in the sense that we're not white, but you're not getting diversity of thought necessarily. You're getting students that are from a homogenous group for the most part. And so, yeah, you look different, but how much diversity is there really when people can't just from off the street even apply to the internship? It's limited to a certain number of schools in MLT, and that's it. So it depends on what the goal is.
Yeah, that's a great point. Diversity does vary. I'm going to finish off with two last questions. The first one's for you, Ayo. I do know that you have a co-founder, or at least maybe a product manager that I saw on your LinkedIn. And I was going to ask, how do you build diverse teams? Because of course, one of the greatest advantages of having a diverse team is having a variety of mindsets and ideas. And then I have a follow-up question for you after that.
Yes, so I'm currently a solo founder, and I have built my team mostly of like marketing extensions, so like marketing directors, marketing interns. And for me, when it comes to hiring, I look for someone that's like different than me, and I'm not just talking about race. I'm talking about like, you think different. You're like passionate about marketing. You love marketing. Because for me, I respect marketing. I admire it. I actually like looking through ads. I'm like, okay, let me look at their messaging. However, the actual strategy and content creation, I like cringe. So I look for someone that's like super excited about it and comes from like a different perspective than I do. Outside of like my core team, I surround myself with mentors. And my university, I'm so biased, but it's the best, Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. They have really just given me so many resources as far as, Billy, did you go there?
U of H.
Oh God. Okay. I respect, but they have given me so many resources, and I did an accelerator program with them where they gave me a team of mentors from marketing, legal, products, and just like general business. And all of those perspectives have really helped me elevate the business in a way that if I didn't have it, I don't know where I would be. And so, yeah, I look for just like when it comes to business, like you just come from a different lane that I don't come from. Like I'm a product person, but I value like people who are just passionate about other things that can bring things to the table to make the business and the product better.
Good deal. So my last question was about the best resources that one should look for, or that BIPOC founders can benefit from. Ayo, you mentioned a great one, university resources. Of course, always go back to your university and see what they can do for you, what they can offer. I'm going to also let Shironda and Jessica each give one resource, the best resource that you can mention, that has been of help to you and your organization.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Outside of my amazing university, Future Founders. So Future Founders was actually my first ever check back in 2017 when I started, and it was $250, which felt like $1 million whenever I started that business. Yep. And so they are a nonprofit organization focused on supporting young people. Like their market is like middle school to 30-year-olds. And so they have programs from like boot camps to fellowships to pitch competitions, where they just like give you mentorship, resources, money, like literally everything to help you succeed. And so I did their national pitch competition in 2017, won their venture award. And then this past year, I did their fellowship where I was given a community, or I was in a community of founders from across the world, not the world, but the nation, different backgrounds, different industries, people who have like raised millions to people who are just like launching. So different diverse set. And we had like masterminds and like mentors throughout the entire program. And I could talk about them all day. They've been amazing. So Future Founders, check them out. They actually have their fellowship applications opening up, or they're open and they close at the end of this month. But they're just incredible, and happy to connect anyone that would love to be connected to their COO.
We are in the middle of the month, everybody. So like Ayo said, go look at that application. Time is of the essence. Shironda, what about you? What's your favorite resource that Cost EDU has benefited from?
So I would say accelerators. Between accelerators and pitch competitions, we raised almost $100,000 in non-dilutive funding. So definitely accelerators. You get money, you get a lot of mentorship, advisors that walk you through the entire process. It can be a 12-week or 10-week or whatever the case is. So we did Founder Gym, which is specifically for us. We also did Mass Challenge. We won $25,000 through them. We've done E4All, which is located in different parts of the country. I'm not sure if it's, but they do have a few in Massachusetts. We did one of the ones in Boston. we won money from them. We did the Boston University Summer Accelerator, we won money there. So definitely accelerators for the mentorship, for the funding, and really for the introductions to potential funders and other resources.
Nice, perfect. Jessica?
So I gave a couple earlier, and I'll drop those in the chat. But when you said the number one, you already know. So the Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship, definitely. So before I became a student, I had co-founded my first business with my partner, and we actually I went back to college because I didn't know anything about business, and we had just started the business. We knew how to run the business, but we didn't know anything about finance, accounting, any of that. So when I did go back to the Wolf Center, it kind of changed everything. And they are the reason that we founded Good Sparrow, because Good Sparrow is not the business that I went in there to learn more how to grow. But after going through everything that they put us through in there, and just having, they really made us think about not just our business, right? And what career we wanted. They really made us think about, your mental, your spiritual, your physical, every aspect of your life. And once we did that personal purpose assessment, that's when we started Good Sparrow, because we had to think like, okay, what do we want to do with the rest of our lives? And I actually did the same thing with my partner, who's my husband now. And he did the same exact thing. And then we side by side looked at everything that we had in that assessment. And, we just put all of our goals and dreams together in life and in business, family, whatever it was. And that's how we started Good Sparrow. So, and then once we did that, it was like the students that were in my class were supportive. I mean, I did crowd funds. We did like 2 crowd funds in the beginning, and there were a lot of the people that were funding, Dave, he was there. He helped us come up with the name, as well as my mentor there. They have so many resources. So, and then the scholarships were a big deal because, actually every student, I think, at Wolf Center gets a scholarship now. Yeah. And they were working towards that whenever I was there in 2012, 2013. And now it's like happening. So it's awesome. But even back then I got a scholarship, and that really helped me out. Like I actually graduated debt-free because of the scholarships and grants.
That's awesome.
From Wolf, from Sivia and Melvin Wolf Foundation. And it's just, number one resource, definitely. They are the biggest impact in our lives.
Exactly. No, that is a great deal. And she big up them, but they broke us first. Ken Jones especially.
I didn't listen too much to Ken that way.
It had to be rebuilt. It was like joining the Marines. But all great questions, all great answers. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. That does conclude our panel. But please do be sure to join all of these founders in supporting their causes and their missions. Be sure to support them. Like I said, if you're tired of your clothes getting stretched out, worn out, you need to go support Hangio with Ayo's business. Be sure to go check that out. Her @ is right next to her name, @Shop Hangio, HANGIO. Also, Shironda can be of help to any high school students that you know, or even middle school students that you know, that are already looking to prepare for their college journey and need help with assessing the costs, as well as conquering those costs. Like I said, her company's name is Cause EDU. Once again, that's Cause EDU. And you can always reach out to Shironda as well on LinkedIn, or maybe hit her up on IG. Are you on IG, Shironda?
Yep, we're at Cause EDU on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of that.
Perfect, perfect. And then last but not least, of course, for all of you looking to tell your business's story, be sure to reach out to Jessica and Nelson at Good Sparrow. Awesome business. They tell all of the Wolf Center stories, and a lot of the entrepreneurs that come from the Wolf Center, they also help us tell our stories as well. So if you want to take your content to the next level, be sure to follow Good Sparrow and reach out to Jessica as well. So thank you, everybody. Hope you guys enjoy your weekend, and of course, continue to enjoy 4-Day Founder. And tomorrow, the pitch competitions come to an end with the winner being announced. So be sure to tune into that as well.